Story 1. We had two lovely neighbors who moved out, and a woman moved in who mostly kept to herself and wasn't very friendly. No problem, everyone has their own way of living. However, she would host large parties in our small suburban neighborhood that went well into the evening. At least twice, we had to ask someone not to park in our driveway or block access to it. One evening, she was having a very large party, and at some point, I went out to get the mail and did a double take at the enormous catering truck parked in our driveway. I was more confused than upset at first, figuring they had simply gotten the wrong address. But there was no one in the truck, they were all inside, and the party was loud and ongoing. I decided to give them the benefit of the doubt and went to her door to ring the bell. Our houses have front doors with glass panels, so everyone inside could clearly see me standing there. I rang and knocked. People looked at me, but no one came to the door, which was locked. Finally, an older gentleman came out, but it was clear that English was not his first language. He said he would let the neighbor know. She never came out. At this point, I was becoming quite frustrated. As I headed back to my house, ready to call a tow truck, I noticed some of the caterers unloading supplies into her garage. I approached them as politely as I could and asked them to move the truck. They told me the neighbors said it was okay to park there and that they just needed a little more time. I told them, firmly but respectfully, that it was my property, not hers, and asked them again to please move the truck. They ignored me, so I said, "All right, I'm going to have you towed." That finally got their attention, and they began to move the truck, although one of them called me a rude name. I called the catering company the next day. It was clearly a small, independent business, and when I explained what had happened, the woman who answered became very defensive. Instead of apologizing, she began raising her voice and calling me names. She repeatedly insisted that the neighbor had given them permission to park in our driveway, so they believed they had every right to be there. I tried to explain calmly that the driveway belonged to me, not the neighbor, and that it wasn't her place to give others permission to use it. Unfortunately, the conversation went nowhere, and she eventually hung up on me. The neighbor never apologized, never offered any explanation, and never spoke to us again. To this day, I still have no idea why any of them thought it was acceptable to park a massive catering truck in someone else's driveway without even asking. It's one thing to throw a loud party and inconvenience your neighbors, but it's a completely different situation when you start using their private property like it's part of your own event. The entire situation left a bad taste in our mouths, and it certainly changed the way we viewed her from that point forward. Story 2. This one turned out a bit longer than I thought it would, also probably my first encounter with an entitled person, that I remember at least. I may have dealt with them before, but have no recollection in my young adult life. So this happened a couple of weeks ago. We went on a family holiday in the south of the country and left our dog with our maid for the time being. She loves him and her children love him too, so they were all in for a good time. When we came back, I went over to her house with my sister to pick the dog back up. As we are leaving, just going down her road, I see a house with its gate open, and suddenly a dog comes rushing out of it, headed straight for the street. I slammed the brakes as hard as I could, but the car still ended up hitting the dog. Didn't do a lot of damage, thankfully, but it still must have hurt like hell. Being a decent human being and an animal lover, I instantly pull the handbrake and try to speak to the owner of the dog who is coming up to me to see how bad the injury was. Now, whenever you get yourself involved in an accident, the first priority should always be to check on the victims and tend to them or call an ambulance if it's needed. But apparently that's not what this dog owner thought. He thought that since he saw me driving a much nicer car than the ones from that neighborhood, a 2011 Subaru Impreza, nice car and definitely way better than what was around there, but nowhere near as nice as he might have thought it was, he could try to intimidate me and maybe score some cash out of it. Events and conversation went like this. "Oh my God, what happened? How is he? Is he fine?" I was shouting from my car when I stopped to assess the situation. The entitled dad was rushing straight to the side of the car and raising his voice in a clear attempt to intimidate me. You do know what you did, right? Why did you hit my dog? Did you not see him? Now I'll have to go to the vet and pay for it. Note: intimidation attempt failed miserably. I've dealt with worse suckers than this jerk. Me, going full into damage control mode, but keeping my cool. He rushed in. I tried to stop, but it was too sudden. I couldn't get a full stop in time. But is he fine? Yeah, but now I'm the one stuck with the vet trip and bill that comes from this, right? Sure, because you seem totally worried about your dog that just got hit by a car, and not just trying to make money out of the situation. At this point, he starts moving towards the front of my car. Yeah, just let me get a good shot of your plate. You do know that what you did is a terrible crime, and I don't remember exactly what he said here because I had already reached my "are you serious?" point and knew he was just wanting to be a pain. Put him in the car. Let me take him to the vet. He seems to ignore me the first time, so I raise my voice a bit to call his attention. Having noticed that his son was tending to the dog back in the house, I just keep going. Hey, get over here and stop this nonsense. First things first, get the dog and put him in the car. I'll take him to the vet. Anyone keeping track on how many times I've said this? At this point, he spouts some more nonsense about what I did was a crime. And it wasn't. It was an accident born from his negligence in leaving the front gate open, and the vet costs and all, so I just wasn't listening to him anymore and instead turned to talk to his son who was inside the gate and signaled him to come to the car. Hey, you there, get your dog and get in. Let's take him to a vet now. Son comes in. He is still babbling nonsense and trying to intimidate me and failing, like he'd been doing through this whole exchange, and we set off. I don't know that area, so I just make a quick Google search and head straight to the nearest vet clinic. Me and the son exchange some words in the car, and he is the total opposite from his jerk father. He says he's sorry for what happened, even though it wasn't his fault, and that the dog never did this, and we all in all just have a pleasant conversation until we reach the vet. I dropped them both off there, explained what happened to the doctor, and went my way because I still had some work to do. I called the vet clinic later that day to check on the boy and the dog, and as I expected, it wasn't seriously injured in any way. I managed to slow down just enough that he didn't break anything or got hurt badly. But the fact that some dude would try to pull that one on me, to try and intimidate me and probably find any little reason to sue me for animal cruelty or whatever, instead of tending to a dog that just got hit by a car, will baffle me for years to come. Story 3. My brother passed away 6 months ago. He was a military veteran, and his service dog, Max, was trained specifically to assist with post-traumatic stress disorder, mobility support, and seizures. Max is 6 years old, incredibly well-behaved, and still clearly grieving the loss of his handler and best friend. Since my brother's passing, I've taken on the responsibility of caring for Max. According to my brother's will, I'm Max's legal successor. Max is more than just a dog, now he's family. Then, out of nowhere, my cousin, who is 34 years old, and someone I haven't spoken to in over a year, sent me a message. Her message read, "I heard you have a service dog. You don't need that. My son has anxiety and could use a therapy dog." I calmly explained to her that Max isn't just a therapy dog. He is a professionally trained service animal who underwent years of specialized training. Legally and ethically, I am now his handler. She responded by saying, "So you're choosing a dog over a child's mental health?" Then, she had the nerve to offer me $300 for him. That's right, $300 for a professionally trained service dog who cost over $20,000 to train and who has been through extreme emotional and physical challenges alongside my brother. Naturally, I refused. But the situation didn't end there. She showed up at my front door the very next day, bringing her son with her. I didn't answer the door. I watched silently as she stood there, then eventually left. Moments later, I received a message from her, calling me cruel. She accused me of wasting Max's potential. I told her that the only thing being wasted here was her nerve and sense of entitlement. She didn't take that response well. She bombarded me with a series of messages, each one more dramatic than the last. She claimed I was depriving her son of a chance at a normal life. She said that Max would be doing more good helping a child than just sitting around with me. I ignored most of her texts, hoping she'd eventually drop it. But then she took it a step further. She posted on social media, publicly tagging me, writing a long, exaggerated post accusing me of hoarding a dog out of spite. She described Max as some sort of magical cure-all for anxiety and made it seem like I had stolen him from a child in need. Her followers, who didn't know the real story, began commenting with sympathy and outrage, calling me heartless and selfish. Some of them even messaged me directly, pressuring me to do the right thing and give Max to her. I was stunned by how far she was willing to go, especially considering we hadn't even been close in years. She knew nothing about the bond Max and my brother had, nor the trauma Max experienced during and after my brother's service. Eventually, I had enough. I took screenshots of her messages, including the one where she tried to buy Max for $300, and posted a calm, factual response. I explained that Max was a highly trained service animal who was legally entrusted to me by my brother's will. I clarified that Max is not a therapy dog, and that separating him from his current handler me would not only be traumatizing but potentially dangerous for both of us. I didn't attack her character. I simply presented the truth. The backlash she had stirred began to fade once people realized how serious the situation actually was. A few even apologized for jumping to conclusions. She deleted her post but never apologized to me. Instead, she sent one final message: "You're going to regret this." I didn't respond. Max is safe, loved, and well cared for. He's not just a dog, he's a veteran's legacy, a living tribute to my brother, and he deserves peace, not to be treated like some emotional support accessory someone can claim on a whim. If she tries anything again, I'm fully prepared to take legal action. Some lines just shouldn't be crossed. Story 4. I've been dealing with this kid on the school bus for months now. He's one of those bullies who thinks he's tough because he's got a big mouth and his mom probably tells him he's special every day. The kid's about 10, maybe 11, and he's been making my rides to school miserable with his constant harassment and racist comments. I'm not one to fight back usually, I just put my headphones in and try to ignore him. But what happened last Tuesday night changed everything. I live with my grandpa in a quiet neighborhood where most people mind their own business. My little cousin was staying with us for the week while her parents were out of town. She's only 7 and looks up to me like I'm some kind of superhero, which makes me feel responsible for protecting her from anything bad in this world. That evening was brutally hot, one of those summer nights where the air feels thick and sticky. My cousin had been cooped up inside all day watching cartoons, so I decided to take her for a walk around the block to get some fresh air. We'd made it about halfway around when we both got thirsty, so we stopped at this little water fountain near the playground. I was helping my cousin reach the fountain when I heard familiar voices approaching. 2 boys were walking toward us, and my stomach dropped when I recognized one of them. It was my bus bully, the same kid who'd been tormenting me for months. I hoped he'd just walk past without noticing us, but no such luck. The bully spotted me immediately, and his face lit up with that cruel smile bullies get when they find fresh prey. His friends seemed nice enough, a kid I'd seen around school, but never really talked to. They stopped right in front of us. The bully started making his usual nasty comments, asking what I was doing in his neighborhood and suggesting I belonged somewhere else. The racist undertone in his voice made my blood boil, but I kept quiet. I'd learned that responding usually just made things worse. My cousin tugged on my shirt, confused by the tension in the air. Then his friends started making comments too, but he directed them at my cousin. That's when I saw her little face change. Her smile disappeared and her eyes got wide with fear and confusion. She didn't understand why these bigger kids were being mean to her, but she knew something was wrong. That's when I snapped. Nobody messes with my family. I told him to back off from her because she was just a kid. The bully got angry and told me to shut up, saying he could do whatever he wanted. I repeated that he could do what he wanted, but needed to leave my cousin out of it. His friend seemed uncomfortable and suggested they should just leave. I actually felt bad for the other kid. He seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation and was trying to get his friend to leave, but the bully wasn't having it. Without warning, he shoved my cousin hard. She stumbled backward and almost fell. That was it for me. I don't care how much I hate violence or how scared I usually am of confrontation. Nobody pushes around a 7-year-old girl on my watch. I punched him square in the face. He went down hard, and I gave him a couple kicks while he was on the ground. Then I grabbed my cousin's hand and we ran. She was crying, but I could hear the bully getting up behind us and starting to chase after us. Thankfully, I knew the neighborhood better than he did. We cut through Mrs. Johnson's backyard and made it home before he could catch up. My cousin was shaken up, but okay. I got her some ice cream and put on her favorite movie to help her calm down. About an hour later, there was a loud knock at our front door. My grandpa was in his chair reading the newspaper, and he looked at me with raised eyebrows. He asked if I was expecting someone, and I told him no. I opened the door to find a woman I'd never seen before. She was probably in her 40s, with bleached blonde hair and the kind of angry expression that meant trouble. She introduced herself as the mother of the boy I had attacked that night. When I asked what she wanted from me, she demanded that I apologize to her kid. I refused, explaining that her son had pushed my 7-year-old cousin. Her voice got louder and more shrill with each word. I could tell this wasn't going to go well. She asked if there was an adult present, so I called my grandpa over. He's a veteran who's seen his fair share of difficult people, but he's also got zero patience for nonsense. He walked over slowly, sizing up the situation. Karen immediately started yelling at him, using language that would make a sailor blush. She was accusing me of attacking her innocent baby for no reason and demanding that we pay for his medical bills. My grandpa calmly told her that his grandkid wasn't going to apologize because her kid had hit his cousin. She screamed back that she wouldn't believe her baby boy could do such a thing. She was screaming so loud that neighbors were starting to peek out their windows. Her voice was cracking like a teenage boy going through puberty, but somehow even more annoying. That's when things got really weird. She started looking around our front porch like she was shopping at a yard sale. We had some dishes drying outside that my grandpa had washed earlier, and our little inflatable pool was deflated and folded up in the corner. She announced that if we wouldn't pay for her son's pain and suffering, she would just take some compensation herself. She actually reached for our plates. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This woman was trying to steal our stuff right in front of us. I asked what she was doing and told her she couldn't just take our things. She said to watch her as she grabbed the deflated pool and started pulling it toward her car. I tried to yank it back, but she had some kind of crazy strength. It was like wrestling with someone on drugs. I called for my grandpa to help. He stepped in and easily pulled the pool away from her. That's when she completely lost it. She actually punched my grandpa in the chest. Big mistake. My grandpa is old school. He served 2 tours overseas and doesn't take crap from anybody, especially not some entitled parent trying to steal his property and assault his family. He told her she had just made the biggest mistake of her life, and that she had exactly 10 seconds to get off his property before he called the police. She yelled back that he couldn't threaten her and that she knew her rights. He calmly replied that he knew his rights too. He put his hand on his hip where he keeps his concealed carry permit. He didn't draw anything or make any real threats, but the message was clear. Karen's eyes went wide and all the fight went out of her immediately. She stumbled backward down our front steps, threatening that this wasn't over and that she was calling the police. My grandpa told her to go ahead and tell them she tried to rob an old man and assaulted him on his own property. He said he was sure they'd be very interested in that story. She ran to her car so fast she almost tripped over her own feet. We watched her speed away, tires squealing. The police never came. Turns out when you're in the wrong, calling the authorities isn't really an option. My cousin and I never saw that bully again on our walks, and he's been mysteriously absent from the school bus ever since. Word travels fast in small neighborhoods, and apparently Karen's midnight porch robbery attempt became the talk of the local Facebook groups. My grandpa went back to his newspaper like nothing happened, but I caught him smiling as he turned the page. Story 5. I work at a restaurant, one of those small, cozy local bistros. It's not exactly high-end, but we're almost always fully booked because we're in a great location and have a limited number of tables. Recently, a woman emailed us saying she wanted to bring her boyfriend to our restaurant to celebrate a very special occasion. I won't go into too much detail out of respect for her privacy. It's not uncommon for us to receive more specific table requests for special events. Sometimes people ask to reserve an entire section for privacy or request permission to set up some decorations. This woman wasn't demanding at all, she simply asked if she could pay in advance to have a more secluded and decorated table. We genuinely appreciate these kinds of reservations when people are respectful and reasonable in their requests. So, we set aside a cozy corner of the restaurant. It wasn't entirely private, but it was tucked away in a little nook that wasn't easily visible from the rest of the place. We added some string lights, candles, and flowers to make it more romantic. She even came in earlier that evening to set up something personal of her own. Again, I won't say exactly what it was, but it was very clearly sentimental and specific to their relationship. When the evening arrived, the couple came in and gave me their last name. Of course, I recognized it right away and was happy to lead them to their specially arranged table, only to discover that an older woman and a young child were already sitting there. Their belongings were scattered all over the place like they had claimed it as their own. Apparently, they had ignored the "Please wait to be seated" sign, the "Closed for private event" sign, and even the "Reserved" sign. They had simply walked right in when no one was watching. Since there were only 2 of us working the tables that night because the place is so small, they managed to sneak past unnoticed and claimed what was clearly the only unoccupied table. Some people just seemed completely unaware of their surroundings, so at first, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I thought maybe they were just a little confused. I approached them as gently as I could, even though I was panicking inside with a couple standing right behind me. But it quickly became obvious that the older woman knew exactly what she was doing. She immediately became defensive and started complaining loudly about how no one had come to take their order and how they were being forced to wait. I calmly explained that the table had been reserved in advance, that the entire restaurant was fully booked, and that they would need to leave. She loudly told me she didn't care, that all the other restaurants in the area were full, and that she and her grandson had every right to be there. It took a long and stressful back and forth between her, my coworker, and me. But when we finally said we would call the police to have them removed, she reluctantly got up and left. Unfortunately, by that point, the damage had already been done. The entire mood was soured, and to make things worse, the child had messed with the personal item the woman had left at the table earlier. It wasn't valuable, just a thoughtful little surprise she had planned. Still, the couple looked visibly upset. While they never blamed us, I could tell the woman was holding back tears. What she had planned clearly meant a lot to her, and I felt absolutely terrible that it had been ruined. I've heard plenty of stories about having to deal with difficult people in the service industry, but this was the first time I experienced it myself. I'm just a student working a few nights a week to make some extra money. My heartfelt sympathy goes out to anyone who has to deal with behavior like that on a regular basis. Story 6. I, a 29-year-old male, travel about once or twice a month from Germany to visit my father in Spain. He enjoys his well-earned retirement there. I am self-employed, running 2 businesses, and since both have been doing very well in recent months, I'm grateful that I can afford to fly that often to see him. I always fly business class with a well-known German airline group because I'm allowed to check in 2 pieces of luggage. I like to bring back a lot of things from Spain after my 3 5-day stays, such as cheese, sausages, food, and fruit from my father's trees. There's a specific route from Germany to Spain that works well for me, especially because I can save up to €250 on a return business class ticket. The downside of this offer is that I must take an early flight at 6:30 am with a layover in Zurich, Switzerland. That means I need to be at the airport by 5 am to drop off my luggage. One morning in March last year, I got up around 4 am and got ready for the cab I had ordered. It arrived right on time and dropped me off at the airport around 4:50 am. The check-in counter was to open at 5 am. So I got in line, which was completely empty at the time. I was the first. A few minutes before the counters opened, I noticed a woman later referred to as the entitled mother with her child struggling with the luggage machines at the economy drop-off. I minded my own business and continued checking emails on my phone. Suddenly, the entitled mother and her child cut in front of me in line. Me. Excuse me, ma'am? You have to wait until it's your turn. Entitled mother. Don't you see that I have a child? I don't have to wait. Me. I'm pretty sure that having a child doesn't give you any right to cut in front of someone who's already waiting. Please wait until it is your turn. Entitled mother. Oh my goodness, leave me alone, you creep. Apparently, our conversation caught the attention of the airport staff, who came over to ask what the issue was. He addressed me first. Airport staff, is there a problem, sir? Me. Well, She cuts me off. Entitled mother. Why are you asking him first? I'm the victim here. He cut in front of me. Me. That's not true. I've been waiting patiently here since 4:50 am for the counter to open when she came out of nowhere and cut in line. Airport staff. Ma'am, could I see your ticket, please? The staff member smiled as soon as he saw her ticket. Airport staff. Ma'am, this is the wrong check-in counter. You're flying in economy class and need to use the luggage drop-off machines over there. Entitled mother. So? I'm a mother with a child. I have the right to stand here in line just like he does. I handed the staff member my phone, showing my ticket that clearly stated, Business Class, Frequent Traveler. Airport staff. This gentleman has every right to be here. I'm not going to ask again. Please leave. Entitled mother. I won't leave. Leave me alone. As the counter opened, she rushed to the desk faster than I could believe, trying to check in her luggage. I calmly told the airport staff, Don't worry, it's okay. I'm not in a rush. I'm sure the counter staff will handle it. A second worker at another counter waved me over, and I walked to her. She asked what the commotion was about, and I explained the situation. She giggled and allowed me to drop off my luggage with no issues. When she asked if I wanted a printed boarding pass as well, I said yes. You never know when your phone might die unexpectedly. As she handed me the boarding pass, the entitled mother stormed over and shouted, You pay for my upgrade. Me. Excuse me? Entitled mother. You heard me? I deserve it way more than you to fly in business class. Me. Are you serious? I won't pay for your upgrade. I don't even know you. And besides, you were extremely rude earlier, called me inappropriate names, and cut me in line. Entitled mother. Then give me your ticket. Me. I won't do that. Have a nice day, ma'am. I grabbed my boarding passes and walked away, hoping that would be the last I saw of her. Unfortunately, she had other plans. She followed me all the way to the security checkpoint. While I was on the phone with my girlfriend, the entitled mother continued to insult me loudly. Entitled mother, you are a terrible person. How could you be so rude to me and my child? And the most outrageous thing she said. You must have stolen the money for that ticket. There's no way someone like you could afford business class. At that point, I was a bit upset but managed to stay calm. Me. Ma'am, you don't know me or what I do for a living. You have no right to say such things about me just because you might be feeling envious. I wish I hadn't said that. She became furious and started kicking my hand luggage. Then she tried to snatch my boarding pass. After grabbing it, she attempted to run off with her child toward the security gates. Thankfully, the airport staff who had helped earlier saw everything and stopped her right at the gates. Airport police were called, and I was asked whether I wanted to press charges. Seeing how embarrassed her child looked, I chose not to. The entitled mother then launched into a pointless rant about how a supposed criminal foreigner like me could afford such travel, while she, a single mother, received no support. For context, I have slightly darker skin, as my mother was part Asian and my father was German. I collected my belongings, passed through security, and went to the restroom. Then I headed toward the lounge to get some breakfast. To my disbelief, I encountered her and her child again on the way. I still wonder how someone acting that unhinged managed to get through security. She followed me, thinking I wouldn't notice, but I went straight to the lounge and lost her. At the lounge counter, I asked if my gate had been announced yet. Suddenly, through the heavy glass doors, I heard her yelling louder than ever. Entitled mother. That was my friend. He knows me and will confirm everything. I had no patience left for this. I sat in an empty armchair, put on my headphones, and listened to music while eating breakfast. A lounge employee soon walked around asking guests if anyone knew the lady outside. Things were escalating again, so I got up and explained the situation to the employee. Eventually, airport police escorted her away. Later, I headed to the gate to board the plane. Once again, fate seemed to enjoy testing me. She was at the same gate. I tried to avoid her, entered the priority boarding line, and got on the plane quickly. But the aircraft had been changed from an Airbus A321 to an Airbus A320, meaning all passengers had to board through the same front door. She would see me. I figured I'd go to the restroom, hoping she'd walk past me by the time I came out. But when I returned, no one else had boarded yet. I sat down and hoped for the best. Suddenly, every passenger looked up as they heard her loud, high-pitched voice echoing down the aisle. I was seated in one right where she could spot me easily. Her child saw me first, then she did. I sighed, knowing the next 45-minute flight to Switzerland would feel like a lifetime. I was seated in one right where she could spot me easily. Her child saw me first, then she did. I sighed, knowing the next 45-minute flight to Switzerland would feel like a lifetime. Immediately after she spotted me, she tried to start a conversation under false pretenses. Entitled mother. Excuse me, sir. I believe you're sitting in my seat. Me. No, I don't think so. Look at my boarding pass. She then grabbed it from my hand and claimed to the flight attendant that I was trying to deceive her. It was an unbelievable accusation. The flight attendant examined the boarding pass, saw my name on it, and asked the woman if she noticed that it was clearly a male name. I then showed my identification card to confirm. She tried to argue further, claiming there must have been an error in the airline system, and insisted that she had booked the seat for herself and her child. Instead of backing off, she sat down next to me with her child and said she would not move because I did not deserve better service, while she, as a mother, did. The flight attendant gave her one final warning. She was told that if she did not stop her behavior immediately, she and her child would be removed from the plane. That seemed to calm her down instantly, and she didn't say another word. Shortly after takeoff, breakfast was served. The same flight attendant returned to apologize for the earlier disturbance. I reassured her that it wasn't her fault and said, "People like that always think they're right." In the end, I arrived in Spain on time and was incredibly happy to finally spend some quality time with my dad. The whole experience left me baffled and amused at how far some people are willing to go to feel entitled. I still wonder what became of her after that flight, but I'm just glad it was over.